completed P-Bass kit from guitarfetish.com. The kit cost approximately $130 total and came with all the parts necessary to build the bass. Over the course of 4 months, using power tools in my family's garage shop, I transformed the assorted parts and pieces into a low-end thumper. I called it Project BYOB, short for Build Your Own Bass. The kit I ordered consists of a poplar body, maple neck and fretboard, a single GFS P-Bass pickup, and all the other hardware that a bass needs. The pickguard came pre-wired, which I'll discuss later. Upon unboxing the kit, I found that the initial neck was missing 2 inlays, one at the 5th fret and one at the 12th fret. I contacted Guitar Fetish about this, and they were very kind to send me a replacement neck with all the inlays intact. The first thing I did was fit the parts together. I realized that the neck cavity in the body was too wide for the neck itself, and that the pickguard was exactly not cut to fit either the body or the neck. I filed down the pickguard edges that ran along the neck cavity so that the neck would fit between them, and then decided on where I would bolt the neck on. With the neck clamped, I used a yardstick to measure approximately 34 inches from the nut so that the bridge would be in the correct position. I eventually bolted the neck on and drilled holes for the pickguard, remeasured, and even used a laser to make sure the alignment was correct. With that done, I drilled holes where the bridge would attach, and then used a foot-long drill bit to bore out a hole into the control cavity for the ground wire, which attaches to the bridge. As I was doing this, I also experimented with stains on poplar. Poplar is not an especially pretty wood, at least to me, because it's usually a yellowish green color that doesn't take a stain well. I considered torching the wood with a heat gun or butane torch, but decided to stain it instead. Minwax didn't look good on the wood, so after doing some research, I opted to use water-based stamping diluted in water of all things. This worked pretty well, although I found that some parts of the wood weren't taking the ink stain well at all, and I'm not sure why. I tend to think it might be glue or filled grain. I applied pure ink to these areas in order to darken them. This gave the bass a splotchy look in these parts, but fortunately, they're mostly invisible on the sides of the body. After staining, I used True Oil to finish the body, fretboard, and neck. For the body, I turned a coat hanger into a bass hanger and suspended it from a bike hanging from the garage ceiling so I could apply the oil evenly to all parts of the body. The True Oil gave the bass a more amber hue, which I think made a big difference in the final color. After applying several coats, I can't even remember exactly how many, I let the body hang for about a month while the oil solidified to form a protective coat. I did the same for the fretboard and then the neck. The headstock came looking like a big ugly paddle, but that meant I could shape it however I wanted. I traced several scratch patterns on a piece of paper that I taped to the headstock. Then when I decided on one I liked, I used a craft knife to cut the paper along the pattern, and then traced that pattern into the wood. I shaped the headstock using a jigsaw, first sawing notches into the wood perpendicular to the traced pattern, then slowly cutting out that pattern so that small bits of wood would fall out of the way and allow me to maneuver the jigsaw as needed. Be sure if you do this to wear ear and eye protection, and a mask won't hurt either. With the headstock shaped, I used a Dremel tool to smooth out the rough edges, and then sanded it smoother with 230 grit sandpaper. I should have made the headstock slightly longer, because the G-string tuning machine sticks slightly out from behind the wood, hardly enough to be noticed, but it's enough to annoy me. To give the bass my personal touch, I decaled it with my signature. I created the decal by signing my name onto a sheet of drawing paper, scanning it into the computer, and then removing any discoloration. I then sized the decal to scale in a Word document and printed several copies on the same sheet of paper just in case I needed them. I cut the signature out and adhered packing tape to the printed side, trimmed it up, and burnished it with the grip on a pair of scissors so that the ink became firmly adhered to the tape. Finally, I placed the decal in a bowl of lukewarm water for a couple of minutes and then rubbed off the wet paper with my fingers. The result was essentially a sticker with my signature on it that I could easily apply to the headstock and then cover with True Oil. Once the oil had hardened, I smoothed it out by wet sanding with some 1500 grit sandpaper, then installed the tuning machines. At this point, I strung up the bass with the strings it came with so that I could make sure everything would fit together and, frankly, the bass would be playable. I also used this opportunity to correctly position and install the string tree for the D and G strings. The last step was to finally install the pickups. This was easy enough to do. The P-Bass pickup included had 2 wires, one hot and one ground. All I had to do was solder one wire to the correct terminal on the volume pot and solder the other to the ground on top of the pot. With that done, I installed the pick guard, drilled the correct holes into the body in order to mount the pickup, mounted the pickups, strung up the base, and then it was done. Surprised by the sound of this bass. It sounds a lot better than I would have expected a $130 bass to sound. Right off the bat though, I noticed that the volume and tone controls weren't doing what they were supposed to do. I unstrung the bass, took the pick guard off, thinking I'd soldered something wrong. After checking the pick guard's wiring against a wiring schematic from Seymour Duncan, I saw that the pick guard itself was wired wrong, so I had to break out the soldering iron again to fix that. Once I did, it did what it was supposed to do. Overall, I'm very pleased with this kit. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of it, but I'm amazed by how playable it is, both in terms of feel and sound. However, there are some things I'm going to have to fix on it, such as the string action. The neck likely needs a shim because I dropped the saddles to the deck, and the strings are still uncomfortably high from the fretboard. There's also a slight hum when I'm not touching the strings, which means that there's a grounding problem with the circuit. Some copper tape to affix the ground wire to the bottom of the bridge will probably fix this. And, though this isn't something that needs to be fixed per se, I want to string it up with some flat wound strings to see if I can get a mellower tone out of it. But, aside from these issues, I think the bass is great. You're about to hear some sound samples of the bass. First the dry signal straight into GarageBand, and then with my Tech 21 VT Bass Deluxe preamp on various settings. I've placed some riffs that, to my knowledge, were recorded on a P-Bass. Please excuse any bad notes, as it's a tough bass to play with the string action as high as it currently is. Enjoy!